In a corporate structure, a public agency, or a small crew, there is a common assumption. People believe that if they work long hours, master their trade, and deliver clear results, they will advance. It is a logical expectation. But in practice, high performance often yields a different outcome. When you rise quickly, you do not just earn a promotion. You create a baseline of comparison that makes your peers look slow. Your competence exposes their stagnation. Your advancement directly threatens someone else's projected path. In a competitive hierarchy, innocence paired with talent is not an asset. It is an exposure. Over 150 years ago, Alexandre Dumas detailed this exact sequence of events in the Count of Monte Cristo. The young sailor is 19 years old. He is the first mate on a merchant vessel. During a return voyage to France, the ship's captain dies of brain fever. The young sailor takes command. He navigates the ship through a storm, secures the cargo, and guides the vessel safely into the port of Marseille. The ship's owner recognizes the achievement. He stands on the wooden deck of the harbor and bypasses the senior crew, offering the young sailor the permanent captain's position. The position comes with a high salary. With this financial security, the young sailor prepares to marry a young woman from a neighboring village. He goes about his wedding plans. He does not search for rivals because he carries no hostility himself. He assumes his good fortune is the natural result of his labor. But his success intersects with three separate self-interests. The first is a senior officer on the ship, the greedy banker. He has spent years in the shipping trade and expected to receive the captaincy himself. The sailor's promotion blocks his path and freezes his income. The second is a man from the local village, the vain general. He is in love with the sailor's fiancée. As long as the sailor is present, the vain general has no prospect of marrying her. The third is a government prosecutor in Marseille, the hypocritical judge. He is ambitious, positioning himself for a high-level post in Paris. The greedy banker and the vain general meet in a local tavern. They sit in a dark corner. The greedy banker writes a letter to the king's prosecutor, using his left hand to disguise the handwriting. He tells the vain general to deliver it. The letter accuses the young sailor of being a Bonapartist agent carrying a treasonous letter from Elba to a conspiracy group in Paris. It is a fabrication, but it contains enough real detail to trigger an investigation. On the day of his wedding feast, royal gendarme officers enter the hall and arrest the young sailor. They lead him away from his guests and take him to the courthouse. The hypocritical judge conducts the interrogation. He reviews the accusation. He questions the sailor. The sailor explains the facts. The dying captain had ordered him to deliver a sealed package to an address in Paris. The sailor did not open the package. He did not know the contents. He was simply fulfilling his captain's final request. The judge asks for the name on the package. The sailor says the name, Noirtier. The judge's expression stiffens. He sets his pen down on the desk. The recipient of the treasonous letter is the judge's own father, a known Bonapartist supporter. If this letter is entered into the public record, the judge's career is over. He will be associated with treason. He will never secure his post in Paris. The judge looks at the young sailor. He sees a 19-year-old who holds no political opinions, who simply followed orders. The judge walks over to the fireplace. He holds the letter over the flames. He watches it turn to ash. He turns to the sailor, smiles, and tells him that the evidence is destroyed. He says he must hold him in custody for just a short period to complete the paperwork, then he will be free to go. The judge walks out of the room. He does not sign a release form. He signs a transfer order. Guards enter the room. They put a black hood over the sailor's head. They lead him down a dark corridor and force him into a carriage. The carriage drives to the docks. He is placed in a small boat rowed by 4 armed guards. They row away from the city lights into the open bay. They approach a limestone island rising out of the water. On top of the rock sits the Château d'If, a high-security prison reserved for political enemies of the state. The guards pull the sailor out of the boat. They push him through a low archway. The young sailor does not know who wrote the letter. He does not know why the judge changed his mind. He is led down a flight of stone, stares into a damp cell beneath the sea level. The iron door slams shut. The cell is 6 paces long and 4 paces wide. No sunlight penetrates the limestone walls. During his first years, the young sailor speaks to the walls. He prays. He begs the jailer for news, then for a trial, then for a Bible. The jailer does not answer. He sets down a bowl of soup, a loaf of black bread, and a pitcher of water, then locks the door. By the 5th year, the sailor stops speaking. He decides to starve himself. Each morning when the jailer leaves the food, the sailor waits until the footsteps fade, then throws the bread through the iron grate of his window into the sea below. His limbs grow thin. He lies on his straw mattress, waiting for his organs to fail. On the 82nd day of his starvation, a scraping sound vibrates through the stone floor. It is not the sea. It is a rhythmic, deliberate scratching. The sailor crawls to the corner of his cell. He presses his ear to the damp mortar. The sound stops, then resumes. He takes his water pitcher and strikes the wall 3 times. The scratching stops. 3 days later, a stone in the corner of the floor shifts. A hand reaches up through the dirt. A man climbs out. He is the mentor. He is an old Italian priest, a political prisoner who has spent years digging a tunnel with a knife made from a barrel hoop, a file made from an iron spoon, and a rope made from his bedsheets. The guards believe he is insane because he talks of a massive, non-existent treasure and spends his days writing treaties with ink made from soot and wine. He intended to tunnel to the outer wall of the fortress. His calculations were off by 15 feet. He has tunneled into another cell. The sailor shares his thin soup with the old man. As the sailor's strength returns, he tells the mentor his story. He recounts the storm, the dying captain, the letter, the arrest at his wedding, and the judge's change of behavior during the interrogation. The mentor does not offer condolences. He listens to the sequence of events like a mathematician analyzing an equation. He asks the sailor for the names of the men around him. The mentor asks who stood to gain from his absence. The sailor says the first officer, the greedy banker, became the captain of the ship. The mentor nods. He asks who else. The sailor says his rival, the vain general, married his fiancée. The mentor asks about the prosecutor, the hypocritical judge. He asks for the name of the man on the sealed letter. The sailor says the name, Noirtier. The mentor explains that Noirtier is the judge's father. The judge did not destroy the letter to save the sailor. He destroyed it to bury the evidence of his own family's treason. He locked the sailor in the Chateau d'If to guarantee his silence. The sailor sits in the dark. He does not weep. He picks up the piece of black bread from his plate. He chews slowly. His eyes focus on the flagstones. The tunnel between the cells remains open, concealed by a heavy flagstone. For the next 7 years, the mentor reconstructs the sailor's intellect. He does not teach him philosophy. He teaches him systems. They spend hours in the dark. The mentor teaches the sailor 3 languages. He teaches him the chemistry of poisons and medicine. He teaches him the history of European states, the movement of international capital, and the mechanics of political power. In the 14th year of his imprisonment, the mentor suffers a stroke. His limbs paralyze. Knowing his time is limited, he tells the sailor to retrieve a scrap of paper hidden in his mattress. It is a fragment of a will from an ancient, wealthy Italian family. It contains coordinates and instructions for finding a massive vault of gold, diamonds, and jewels buried on the uninhabited island of Monte Cristo. The mentor dies during the night. The jailers find the body. They wrap it in a heavy canvas sack, sew it shut, and leave it on the bed, intending to return in the evening for the burial. The sailor crawls through the tunnel. He carries the mentor's body back to his own cell and places it under his blanket. He returns to the mentor's cell. He takes a knife made from a sharpened iron spoon. He cuts the stitching of the burial shroud. He climbs inside the sack. He sews the opening closed from the inside. At nightfall, 2 guards enter the cell. They pick up the heavy sack. They comment on the weight, assuming the old man's bones have grown heavy with dampness. They carry him up the spiral stone stairs, out onto the ramparts. They tie a 36-pound iron weight to his feet. They swing the bag between them. The guards swing the heavy body bag over the edge of the rampart, throwing it down into the freezing, turbulent ocean. With the 36-pound iron weight tied to his feet, the sea water is cold. The 36-pound iron weight pulls the canvas bag down toward the dark rocks. The sailor works his hand out of his pocket. He grips the iron knife made from the sharpened spoon. He cuts a slit through the heavy canvas. He slices the rope holding the weight to his feet. He kicks himself free from the burial shroud. He swims toward the surface, his lungs burning. He breaks the water. He swims for 3 miles through the dark to a deserted island. 14 years have passed since his arrest. His skin is pale, his beard is thick, and his hands are calloused. He joins a crew of Genoese smugglers, working as a sailor to gain their trust. He suggests a landing on the uninhabited rock of Monte Cristo. Once ashore, he fakes an injury to remain behind when the crew departs. He climbs the rocky cliffs, referencing the mentor's map. He locates a cleft in the stone. He uses a crowbar to pry loose a massive boulder. Beneath the rock lies a small, hidden cavern. He descends. He clears away centuries of dirt to find a wooden chest bound with iron. He breaks the lock. Inside are compartments filled with gold coins, raw diamonds, and chests of cut rubies and emeralds. The scale of the wealth is unchecked. He has the liquid capital of a small state. A typical response to infinite wealth and 14 years of wrongful imprisonment is immediate violence. The common choice is to purchase weapons, hire mercenaries, and hunt the perpetrators. The sailor does not do this. He understands that raw force is noisy, crude, and easily defended against by the apparatus of the state. He disappears. For 10 years, he does not set foot in Paris. He begins to construct an infrastructure. He purchases a shipping company. He buys fast smuggling vessels. He hires agents across Europe, Asia, and North Africa. He establishes multiple legal identities, securing passports, deed titles, and bank accounts under different names. An English clerk, an Italian priest, a Maltese sailor. His agents do not carry weapons, they carry ledgers. They buy information. They study public registries, court records, and financial transaction sheets. They map the exact positions, liabilities, and habits of his 3 enemies. The reports return. The 3 conspirators have ascended to the top of the French social hierarchy. The greedy banker is now a baron and the most powerful financier in Paris, controlling the national debt. The vain general is now a decorated military commander, a peer of France in the upper house of Parliament, and is married to the sailor's former fiancée. The hypocritical judge is the chief prosecutor of Paris, the most powerful legal authority in the city, holding the power of life and death over its citizens. They are insulated by wealth, high office, and the protection of the state. A physical assault on any of them would trigger a national manhunt and fail to address the core of their power. The sailor organizes the retaliation around their specific frameworks of power. The banker must be ruined through financial transactions. The general must be exposed through his military record. The judge must be dismantled through his own courtroom. He will not act as a vigilante. He will act as a force of nature, executing an inevitable consequence of their own past decisions. He crafts his final identity. He uses his wealth to purchase the uninhabited island from the Tuscan government, along with a patent of nobility. He becomes the Count of Monte Cristo. A custom black carriage rolls over the cobblestones through the gates of Paris. The door panel is emblazoned with a newly registered noble crest. Onlookers among the elite stop to watch. The game begins. The Count of Monte Cristo establishes a presence in Paris. He buys a mansion on the Champs-Élysées. He hosts dinners with rare delicacies. He displays ancient artifacts. The Paris elite notice the spending, but they are more focused on his financial backing. He visits the greedy banker's offices. The banker operates the largest financial house in the city. The Count presents a letter of credit from an international banking house in Rome. The letter requests an unlimited, open credit line. The banker looks at the letter. He smiles. He has managed state loans and sovereign debts. He believes no individual's wealth can stress his reserves. He accepts the terms, expecting to charge high transaction fees on the Count's expenditures. The Count's agents have monitored the banker's portfolio. The banker has positioned his firm heavily in Spanish government bonds. He relies on rapid, state-level information to trade ahead of the market. The communication system of France is the Chap telegraph, a network of towers with mechanical arms that transmit encrypted signals across the country. The Count travels to a remote tower on the line to Spain. He finds the operator, a man living in a damp cottage, surviving on a government stipend of 25 sous a day. The Count sets a bag of gold coins onto the operator's wooden table. He gives the man a specific sequence of movements to transmit. The message is encrypted in the state code. It claims that a military coup has succeeded in Madrid, and the Spanish government has defaulted on its obligations. The mechanical signal travels from tower to tower, arriving in Paris. The official government report is printed in the evening papers. The news of a Spanish default hits the bourse, the Paris Stock Exchange. Traders shout. The greedy banker receives the report at his desk. He calculates the exposure of his bank. If the Spanish government defaults, his bond holdings will be worthless paper. He does not wait for confirmation. He sends his runners to the exchange floor. His agents sell his entire position in Spanish bonds. They accept whatever price the panicked buyers offer. By the time the trading bell rings, the banker has liquidated his holdings at a loss of several million francs. The following morning, the government issues a correction. The telegraph transmission was unauthorized. There is no revolution in Madrid. The Spanish government remains stable. The value of Spanish bonds surges back to its previous level. The banker's paper losses are now locked in. His reserves are depleted, and his creditors are calling in their loans. The Count walks into the banker's office. He has not purchased bonds. He has not traded. He simply presents a demand for cash. He requires 6 million francs immediately, drawn from his unlimited line of credit, to settle a transaction in Rome. The banker points out that such a withdrawal requires notice. The Count references the contract. The terms specify immediate liquidity on demand. If the banker refuses, his firm is in default. The news of the refusal will trigger a run on the bank. The banker has no choice. He empties his vaults to pay the Count. Within 48 hours, the financial community learns of the cash drain. The banker's credit rating drops. His partners withdraw their support. On the third night, the office windows of the banking house are dark. The banker sits in his private study. He packs a single leather valise. He does not pack clothes. He packs bundles of banknotes belonging to the depositors, the orphanages, and the state charities that trusted his firm. He slips out the back door of his mansion. He boards a plain, uncrested carriage and orders the driver to head south, toward the Italian border. The carriage travels down a narrow, unlit mountain pass in Rome. The trees block the moonlight. The horses stop. The driver shouts, then goes quiet. The banker reaches for his valise. The carriage door is yanked open. The barrels of 3 rifles point into the interior. The banker is pulled out into the dirt by armed men, wearing the uniforms of Italian bandits, men whose leader takes orders directly from the Count's agent. The Count pivots to his second target, the vain general. The general's position in Paris does not rest on cash reserves like the banker's. It rests on social prestige. He is a member of the House of Peers, a lieutenant general, and a decorated commander. His entire identity is built on his record during the Greek War of Independence, specifically his defense of the fortress of Janina under the Greek ruler, Ali Pasha. He is treated as a symbol of military honor. The Count's agents travel to Greece and Turkey. They inspect military archives, bribe retired officers, and search state registries. They find a different record of the events at Janina. The general did not defend the fortress. He was the chief military advisor to Ali Pasha. When the Turkish forces surrounded the fortress, the general negotiated a secret transaction. He accepted a bribe of 2 million piasters from the Turks to open the gates. He betrayed his commander. After the fortress fell, he took the commander's wife and his young daughter and sold them into the Ottoman slave markets to cover his tracks and secure his wealth. The Count uses his regional network to trace the daughter Haydée. He locates her in an eastern slave market. He pays the purchase price, secures her official release documents, and brings her to Paris. He does not treat her as a servant. He provides her with a private suite in his mansion and allows her to maintain her national dress and customs. He tells her she is free, but requests that she remain out of the public eye until he asks for her testimony. The Count uses a contact in the Paris press. A small, unsourced paragraph appears in a prominent liberal newspaper. It states that a French officer named Fernand, who served at Janina, betrayed the Greek ruler and sold his family to the Turks. The paragraph does not name the general's current noble title, but the details are specific enough to cause whispers in the salons. The general is furious. He stands before the House of Peers, his military medals pinned to his chest. He denies the accusation. He demands an official parliamentary inquiry to clear his name, confident that any physical witnesses in Greece are long dead. The Committee of Peers convenes. The general presents his version of the campaign, showing official Turkish documents that claim Ali Pasha died in battle. The peers nod, satisfied that the newspaper report was a political smear. The doors to the chamber open. Haydée enters, veiled and accompanied by the Count's attendants. She stands before the committee. She removes her veil. She states her name. She is the daughter of Ali Pasha of Janina. The general scoffs, claiming she has no proof of her identity or his actions. Haydée does not offer an emotional speech. She reaches into her silk purse and produces a leather folder. Inside are the original documents from the slave market of Constantinople. One is her birth certificate. The other is her bill of sale, signed by the merchant, detailing the transaction. The name of the officer who sold her is written in the margin, Fernand Mondego. The handwriting matches the signature on the general's official military papers. The committee's tone shifts. The peers review the signatures. They declare the general guilty of treason and felony. He leaves the chamber. His colleagues turn their backs as he passes. He returns to his mansion on the Rue du Helder. He walks into the salon. His wife, the sailor's former fiancée, and his son look at him. They have read the evening papers. They do not yell. They pack their personal belongings and leave the house. They refuse to use his name or his money. The general is left alone in the empty house. The servants have departed. He walks to his desk. He opens the bottom drawer. He pulls out a loaded brass pistol. He raises the weapon to his temple. The Count turns to his final adversary, the hypocritical judge. The judge's authority sits in the courtroom, where he prosecutes criminals with clinical precision. But his home is governed by a different set of laws. He has a daughter from his first marriage, who is set to inherit a massive estate from her maternal grandparents. He also has a young son from his second marriage. His second wife is protective of her own son's future. She watches the inheritance dynamics, noting that if the stepdaughter were to die, the entire family fortune would default to her biological child. The Count enters the judge's residence under the guise of an exotic scholar. He engages the wife in a conversation about chemistry and the medicines of the East. He pulls a small, red-tinted glass vial from his pocket. He sets it on the table between them. He explains its properties. 1 drop of the substance stimulates the heart. 10 drops paralyze the nervous system, leaving no chemical signature that the autopsy physicians of Paris can detect. He leaves the vial on her writing desk when he departs. The Count does not administer the poison. He does not suggest a target. He simply places a highly efficient tool in the hands of a woman who already has the incentive to use it. The domestic sequence begins. Within 3 months, the stepdaughter's maternal grandfather dies of an apparent stroke. 2 weeks later, the grandmother arrives to settle the estate. She dies after drinking her evening lemonade. The family's old servant, who drinks from the judge's private decanter, collapses on the pantry floor, his limbs locked in spasms. The judge's home becomes a site of constant investigation. The chief prosecutor of Paris, who commands the police departments and detective units of the city, is powerless to stop the mortality rate inside his own walls. He keeps the doctors quiet to protect his reputation, but the tension is visible in his posture. The judge's father, the paralyzed Noirtier, survives an attempt on his life because he has built a tolerance to the substance through daily microdoses. Through this survival, the judge identifies the killer. He confronts his wife in her bedchamber. He does not arrest her. A public trial would expose his family to ridicule and ruin his standing in the Ministry of Justice. He gives her an ultimatum. He tells her that when he returns from court in the evening, he expects her to have paid her debt to the family honor. He points to a bottle of poison. When the judge returns, he enters the room. His wife is dead on the carpet. Beside her lies the body of their young son. She has poisoned the child before drinking the mixture herself. The judge carries the body of his son down to the garden. The count steps out from behind the stone wall. He is no longer wearing his custom silk waistcoat or displaying his noble titles. He peels back his tailored jacket. Beneath it, he wears the coarse, ragged shirt of a merchant seaman, preserved from his years in the Chateau d'If. He looks at the judge. He says the name of the young sailor who was thrown into the sea 24 years ago. The judge looks at the sailor. He looks at his dead son. He does not call for the police. He does not quote the penal code. He drops to his knees in the damp soil of the garden. The chief prosecutor of Paris begins to claw at the earth with his bare hands, babbling incoherently as he searches for his son. The count stands in the damp garden of the judge's residence. The morning air is cold. He looks down at the small body of the young boy, Edouard, lying near the stone bench. The child was 6 years old. He had no part in the conspiracy in Marseille 24 years ago. He was an unintended variable in a calculation designed to dismantle his father. The count realizes that a systematic retaliation, once initiated, operates with its own momentum. It does not respect the boundaries of guilt. He leaves the garden and travels south to Rome. He descends into the catacombs of St. Sebastian, where his agents, led by the bandit Luigi Vampa, hold the greedy banker. The banker has spent 4 days in a dry stone cell. He has not been beaten. Instead, the bandits have applied the rules of his own profession. They have introduced a highly inflated market. When the banker requested a loaf of bread, the bandits demanded 100,000 francs. When he asked for a cup of water, they charged him 50,000. The banker paid, watching his stolen capital dwindle with every meal. When the count enters the cell, the banker is kneeling on the stone floor. His expensive wool coat is covered in dust, his face is thin, and his hair has turned white. He holds his final asset, a single banknote for 50,000 francs. He begs for a cup of water, offering the money. The count looks at him. He does not order his execution. He tells the banker his life is spared. He instructs the bandits to return his remaining money and escort him to the French border. The banker survives. He has enough capital to secure a small room and buy food, but his financial empire is gone, his status is erased, and his pride is dismantled. He is simply an old man with a suitcase, surviving on the margin of the system he once controlled. The sequence of these events offers 3 practical rules for navigating hostile hierarchies. First, emotion is the enemy of strategy. When an individual is marginalized or wronged inside a system, the common reaction is an immediate emotional strike. This is a low-yield tactic. It alerts your adversaries, activates their corporate or legal defenses, and invites the intervention of authority. The strategic response is a calculated retreat. You accept the immediate loss, exit the conflict zone, and focus entirely on the quiet acquisition of liquid capital, specialized intelligence, and multiple identities. You do not initiate contact until the asymmetry of resources is in your favor. Second, execute asymmetrical warfare. The Count did not use physical violence against his primary targets. He did not hire assassins or break into their homes with weapons. Instead, he examined their individual frameworks of power and targeted the vulnerabilities inherent within those systems. He used the banker's appetite for high-risk assets, the general's need for public validation, and the judge's strict adherence to legal procedure. By feeding their existing vices, he allowed them to destroy themselves. You defeat an entrenched opponent by turning their own operating rules into liabilities. Third, establish an exit strategy. Vengeance can serve as a highly effective fuel to drag an individual out of a professional or personal abyss. It provides focus and overrides fatigue, but it is an unstable element. It does not distinguish between the guilty and the bystanders. If you do not have a defined stopping point, the system you construct to ruin your enemies will eventually collapse on you. You must know when the transaction is closed. The stone fortress of the Château d'If still stands on its limestone rock in the Bay of Marseille, its damp cells empty. The individuals who signed the arrest order and wrote the false letter are gone. But the dynamics of leverage, information acquisition, and systematic retaliation remain unchanged. The Count leaves his remaining wealth to his allies, boards his yacht, and sails away from the coast of France. He leaves behind a final letter containing a single piece of counsel. All human wisdom is contained in these two words: wait and hope. This is the end of the narrative sequence. Thank you for listening. We will see you in the next study of power.